Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the ELC Cafe. It's more than just lunch. I see a lot of familiar faces. We're starting to have what we're very fondly referring to as cafe groupies. Thank you so much for joining us this month. We're here to talk about her story in honor of Women's History Month. As you're well aware, yesterday, or was it the day before, was International Women's Day. I'd like to point out the fact that our curator today, Lydia Clark, and her team have created bookmarks for everyone. And I think the intent is that you'll take one for yourself and for a significant woman in your life. Before we get started, would the cafe team, planning team, and execution team please raise their hand to be recognized? It looks easy, but it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. And our videographer is being self-effacing as always, but he certainly is pivotal as well as our IT folks. Cafe, I am predicting, is going to be a blockbuster. So without delay, I'm going to turn the mic over to your curator for today, Lydia Clark, who's our Director of Professional Development, and she's going to introduce our very important panelists and set the tone for today's cafe. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for coming out this afternoon as we celebrate her story. As Pam mentioned, this month, March is Women's History Month, and we pay tribute to those past and present women who have served in leadership positions. Today, I'm honored to introduce to you our distinguished panel of not only local leaders, but some of them serve on state and federal committees. To get started, I'd like to introduce Dr. Susan Neiman. Dr. Neiman is Director of School of Education of Miami-Dade Community College. Dr. Neiman has over 40 years of experience as an educator, as an administrator, and what stood out to me most about her biography is the fact that she's taught every grade from 4th all the way up to doctoral students. So 4-year-olds, yes, that's right, from 4-year-olds all the way up to PhD candidates. And that's not something that you find often. So as an experienced educator, welcome. Next, Vanessa Woodard Byers.
Is now in the conference.
Oh. Ms. Byers is a media maven. As president of Bava New Media, Ms. Byers blogs about community events. She's an activist, an advocate, and political consultant working for many candidates locally and abroad. It's important for our stories to be told, and Ms. Byers tells our stories authentically, both on social media, in news, print. She is always available for our community. She is the Public Relations Committee Chair for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a lifetime member. She's a Links Charter member. I can't say enough about having someone tell our stories, and no one better than Vanessa Woodard Byers. Welcome.
Is now in the conference.
We got more people joining us. Gretchen Biesing, licensed clinical social worker and CEO of Catalyst Miami. I met Gretchen maybe 7, 8 years ago as a member of her team when we did the parent leadership advocacy program at Catalyst Miami. Gretchen filled huge shoes when she took on the responsibility to take Catalyst Miami from being an agency that wants to see meaningful engagement of our community leaders and our residents, making sure parents feel like they have the ability to advocate for their children. And today, Gretchen sits on many local boards. Gretchen is a fighter. She's an advocate. She makes a difference every single day. And the team at Catalyst Miami do so much work in the community engagement, civic leadership. I can't say enough. Gretchen Biesing, thank you so much for coming. I think the most important attribute for Gretchen is that she is a 2015 Next Gen Fellow, and that's amazing. Thank you so much for coming. Gypsy Metellus, Executive Director for Saint La, our neighborhood, Haitian Neighborhood Center. This agency serves as a resource for Haitian American citizens in Miami-Dade County. They provide everything from tax preparation, advocacy, education. Gypsy is also a media maven, hosting her own television show, Telescopy, which I have had the pleasure of visiting her studio. It's top notch. She's a leader in her community. She's visited several countries all over the world, born in
Has
Port-au-Prince.
left the conference.
She has 2 decades of leadership experience, and we're so welcome to have you. Thank you so much for coming. Dr. Sabina Garcia, clinical psychologist, and one of our own. Dr. Garcia serves as our Let's Move trainer here with the Demores Project, but beyond that, she's an author. Dr. Garcia has mentored not only parents, but families on ADHD, working with parents on how to effectively help their children deal with and cope with bullying. She is an asset to this conversation as it relates to supporting children and families, and we welcome Dr. Garcia in accepting our invitation to participate on this panel. Sheila Dudley needs no introduction. Sheila Dudley is an entrepreneur. She owns 3 child care centers with her partner here in Miami-Dade County, and it has plans on expanding to her 4th child care center. She has a vast amount of experience in HR, building diversity, making sure that communities appreciate the contributions of women, but more importantly, Sheila Dudley employs women. As an entrepreneur, she's always here to advocate for her centers, for her families, and we couldn't do what we do without our providers. So as a provider representative, we bring to you Sheila Dudley. Thank you. Last but certainly not least, you're welcome, Carla Hernandez-Matz, President-elect for the United Teachers of Dade. Carla joins the ranks as one of the first Latina to lead an executive position at United Teachers of Dade, which is a huge feat. This is the largest local union with 14,000 members. And Ms. Matz is the first Latina to serve in that position. As an exceptional student education teacher, she served Miami-Dade County Public Schools for a number of years, and now she gets to represent those who help us get to where we are. So as a teacher's teacher, I welcome you. Let's give him a round of applause. All right. We do this cafe in an attempt to bring awareness for every single month. We pick a different topic, and I felt strongly that we needed to celebrate women in March. This company, this organization is 94% female. Our workforce is strong. Our workforce is dynamic. Our workforce has everything it needs to go to the next level. And we do this every single day, and it's important for us to pat each other on the back. So this gives us the opportunity to just do that, to celebrate the women, both here at the organization, outside in the community. And those bookmarks are really placed there so that you had something as a constant reminder to tell your story. So without further ado, we want to open up the floor for our panelists. And the question really is to start, and don't forget to push your button so that you have the mic. The question is, what was your journey to becoming a woman who leads? And we'll start with that before we start taking questions from the audience. So anyone who wants to get started with just telling maybe a 1 or 2 minute response as to what was your journey to becoming a woman who leads?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carla Hernandez-Matz, and I think that once everyone starts sharing their stories, you'll realize that strong women are made by strong women. So there was a strong woman in everyone's life here. So I'll share that story. One of the strong women in my life is my abuelita, my grandmother. My grandmother is 95 years old right now. And she was born in a time and a place in Honduras, Central America, where she was not valued for being a woman. So she was not allowed to go to school. She did not learn how to read. She did not learn how to write. And she had to work at a very early age. She was 11 years old, and she was already working in someone's house. She was a maid, and she was a cook. And early on, she knew that education was important. She wanted to go to school. She wanted to learn how to read, but she was not allowed to do that. 95 years ago. And so, you know, she understood at that moment that education was the equalizer, that that's what she needed to try to provide her children. And, you know, we can talk about children's rights and, you know, labor and how, you know, how unjust that is. She also taught me that. But she learned from a very early age that she needed to push forward, and she did things that were probably not seen as kosher at that particular time. She is the oldest feminist I know because she was a feminist in her time. And so when I went to school, I always thought about the things that she taught me. She had 9 children of her own. And every single child that she had, she made sure that they went to school, and she did whatever she had to do to give them the supplies and the things that they needed so that they can be successful in school. So she pushed for education for every one of her children, boy and girl. And so I'm fruit of her tree. I went on to school and I pushed very hard. And when I would come home from school, my grandmother could not help me with my homework because she doesn't know how to read or write. But she took care of me when I was sick. And when I came home from school, she would make sure that my lunch was there, my snack was there, my dinner was there. She wanted to provide everything else that she knew she could provide to support me. And so I think about her. She's a strong woman. She's you know, had to deal with a lot. She had a husband that was my grandfather, may he rest in peace, who drank too much. And the first time that he tried to beat her, she beat him because she realized she realized that if she allowed that to happen on the first time, then it would continue. But she was a strong woman. She's still a strong woman. And so I learned a lot of important things from her. I learned that public education was very important, the last equalizer, that there have to be child labor laws, that we have to protect our children, and that we have to support women because she taught me so much. And so I urge all of
Is
you,
now in the
people are learning
conference.
from you. So you be the strong women that help other people achieve as well. And that's my story through her.
So I'm going to tell a little different story. How I became a leader in different organizations. And like Carla was saying, it's always been about education for me. So my story is that I was a teenage mom. So I had a baby before I graduated from high school. But still graduated high school at 17. And so I grew up really fast, really early. And I got married at 18, had my second baby at 20, raised a niece and a nephew at the same time. So for me, I was always serious about moving ahead, about education, about my children receiving education. So, you know, I'm a young mom, got a husband, and going to school at night. So one of the things when you go to school at night and you work all day and you have a family, you're really serious about your educational journey. And that was what it was for me. So from that time, and you know, I got my associate's degree and I got my bachelor's degree and I got a master's degree, and I just continued my educational process. But while I was working in where I cut my teeth was in Detroit at the utility company. And there they had very specific roles, especially at that point in time. We were working under, the organization was under a consent decree for racism. And so they had to follow all these court orders with regard to hiring and promoting and all those kinds of things. And I always worked outside of my class. So if my role was and at that time I was a secretary, okay, if my role was a secretary, I still learned everything that I could about the management position and going to meetings and how to do this and how to do this. And my colleagues that were on the same level was, oh, why are you doing that? Because people get paid so much more money for doing that. And my response to them always was, because what goes in here, can't nobody pay for it. They can't take it away from me. And so those same people, when I left and I moved up the latter, you know, where they were still in the secretarial roles. And when I left Detroit Edison, you know, I was administrative manager with about, I don't know, a couple hundred people under my area of responsibility. So my journey was always to develop others. And at that time, there were a lot of women I had a decentralized clerical staff, so providing them opportunities and developing them and giving them guidance and encouragement and having those kinds of conversations with them were always important, and that's what I still do to this day. So that's kind of my journey to where I'm at. Hmm.
Would anyone else like to share?
So my journey is also a little different than the ones you've heard. I come from a long line of very strong women. My great-grandmother, who I am named after, was an entrepreneur. She was a wig maker in Poland and had her own business. My grandmother was also an entrepreneur. She had a very big store, a block worth of a store, and my grandfather actually worked for her. She was my mentor. My family are Holocaust survivors. And so when the war was over, when World War II was over, they were not allowed into the United States. So I was born in Canada. And my mother was divorced when I was an infant because my biological father was an abusive father. When we came to this country, we came with my grandparents, and I lived with my grandparents and my mother. My mother worked, so I spent my time with my grandmother. My grandmother was a house of fire. You never saw a little woman 5 feet tall do as much, carry packages that weighed as much as she, and did everything. I remember going with her to what we called the Chinese laundry and listening to her broken English and the Chinese man in his broken English, and somehow they managed to communicate with one another. And I always wondered what was going on in their brains, And that led me to the journey of becoming a science teacher. My first teaching experience was in the worst high school in New York at that time. I taught in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and I had a year-long work, and I worked with red shirt athletes. So I was 19 years old, and they were 19 years old. And I was supposed to teach them science, and they had difficulty reading. Once you come through something like that, you can leap tall buildings in a single bound. And that was my mantra all my life, that if you tell me I can't do it, watch me. And I had a lot of people along the road tell me, you'll never make it. You'll never graduate college. You'll never do anything. And obviously, you see, they were wrong.
Yeah, we can have 4 of them on at one time, so you're good. The light should be on. Yep. There should be a light that turns on there. There you go.
So maybe it's this one. There's another light on. Okay, that's the right light. So it's an interesting question because as you reflect
Has left the conference.
on your journey, you come to it's a process where you're analyzing where you've been. You're analyzing all of the people, all of the institutions, all of the forces, all of the historical facts that have shaped you. So you look back and you notice that, there was something that sparked this interest in being active, being involved, wanting to make a difference in the world, right? So something sparked that. And for me, that was clearly in my household, right? I grew up in a family that were fiercely anti-Duvalier. Duvalier was the dictator of Haiti, who's quite famous, Baby Doc, Papa Doc, and the rest of that story. And so I watched people around me be very, very active and very opposed to that. And so interestingly, again, you don't, this journey that I'm describing, I understand it now as a result of reflections upon what I've been through, right? And so I realized that based on that, I sort of selected friends who had similar interests, right? I selected friends who were kind of on the left, kind of very anti everything, kind of very wanting to shake things up, wanting to have the world be egalitarian and all of the good things that we ought to still strive for. And as I look again at my education, again associated with people who were very similar to me in interests, associated with people who came from situations and experiences that were similar to mine. So in my case, it's Black people, other Caribbean people, other Latinos who were fiercely involved in the fight against the oppressive regimes of Latin America then, right? And you continue and you look back at your jobs, all of the jobs that you've had, and you realize that they've all prepared you for this moment, right? You realize that all of the people that you've come across have helped to shape you in some way. You realize that you have selected your role models, whether those role models were in your immediate environment, your family, your neighborhood, people you admired from a distance, people in whom you took an interest and read about, right? People that you wanted to emulate, people who were distant but still you admired because you love what they stand for. And so you realize that as you go along, so many people have shaped you. You stand on the shoulders of so many people who've come before you, and it's so much your responsibility as a leader, as a woman who is in this public space and fulfilling a destiny that you still don't know what it is because still you're going through the experience. You recognize that first and foremost, you've got to make room for other women. You've got to mentor and guide other women. You've got to be sure that you lend a hand to bring with you another woman because so many other women have done it for you without even them realizing it. That's it. I'll stop there.
Well, I am one of Gypsy's friends over on the left. Absolutely. And while she was dealing with issues in Haiti with her family, my family was in the panhandle of Florida at that time, dealing with issues of civil rights and just being treated as another human being. So my perspective and my journey, I often find very interesting when I'm talking with other people, and usually it's other women. And usually it's other women that are, significantly younger who don't know anything about payphones or beepers or anything like that. And so it becomes a history lesson. And I realized that my journey brought me to where I am today because of my parents and their friends. Again, in the panhandle, we're talking, mid to late 50s, and everyone was family in that particular town. So I didn't really know who my cousins really were or who my aunts really were because everyone was a cousin or an aunt or an uncle. And so that village concept, really, I had to be a leader because that's what was expected. Nothing else, nothing less. And with my family's background and most of the women at that time not really being homemakers but working and taking care of families, that's just kind of what you did. My experiences as a child was really sharing or giving up my bedroom for someone from the NAACP who was in the town because the Ku Klux Klan had come through and they'd burned the cross. And I didn't really get it at that time. I knew it wasn't right, but it just was. And it's a reality that a lot of people don't really understand today because they don't particularly have that frame of reference. At the same time, my family, my parents were both educators. So again, the common thread is that education transforms lives. My parents, neither side of their family was wealthy. We often say they were too poor to afford the O and the R in poor, so they were just poor. And I saw what that meant to them. Again, kind of taking some things for granted in a way because you're just expected and that's just what you're accustomed to. But they came to Miami, well, moved to Miami. My dad's family was really in Paran, but we came to Miami because my parents were in the teacher walkout back in 1967 or so, 66, 67. That's how we got here. So I saw them have meetings in our household. Some of the teachers who were part of the walkout were not black, so it was a different kind of issue, at that time. And we ended up here, and I still have family in the Panhandle. That's still home for me. I still love it there, but I thank God for coming here. When my parents moved here, still educators, I saw my dad work 3 jobs. I thought all people's dads work 3 jobs. If that's what it took to, raise the family, for them to go to school, had to take care of my brother, have spaghetti every Wednesday, because that's when my mother took class. It was just, that's what we were supposed to do. I didn't realize it was a leadership, preparation. And some of you, know both of my parents, and they were just always helping someone in the community or whatever organization they were a part of. Everybody in the family was a part of that organization, officially or unofficially. So if there was an activity that had to take place, you just had to help my mom or my dad make it happen. It just was. And both of them being educators, they came in contact with a lot of students from different backgrounds. Now keep in mind, my frame of reference is a small town in the Panhandle of Florida, where you were either white or you weren't, in a story. So then we move here to Miami, and it's just like all of these people, and they're speaking different languages, and some of them look like me, but they speak Spanish and they speak other languages, and they were my friends. They were my parents' students. And so I learned to help people because of my parents, just because
Has
of
left
what
the
they did.
conference.
And so that leadership, I try to take, not really consciously in my mind, but just kind of whoever I meet, I talk, and I talk too much sometimes. But it's okay, because I try to instill in women that we can do anything that we really want to. I try to instill in women that, especially young women, it's really, men are great, okay? We need
Is
them.
now in the
Don't get me
conference.
wrong. But we don't have to fight over them or fight for them. And we have to understand that we have to make our own lives, because you never know. Even if you're married, you have a husband, you could lose him to some kind of accident or disease, and you could have
Has
kids that
left
you
the
have to take
conference.
care of. You need to be prepared to take care of them. So my parents raised me kind of with a male female kind of outlook on life. I played football and I played with Barbie dolls, and I still kind of like that today. So you just got to be there to take care of yourself. And that's the leadership that I try to take with me, and I try to pass on in my different activities with other people, not even really just women, but young men too, because we're all on this earth for a particular reason, and we're all valuable no matter what package we come in. And so that's what I try to pass on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe a couple more. And then we'll open
For
up the panel.
me, I've come from a long line of strong males. Uh, the
Has
females,
left the conference.
the females in my family have always been housewives, great housewives, but they've always hanged their diplomas in the walls, and then been in the kitchen, in the home, and raising kids. I was told, go to school, get good grades, but then come home and make a good wife. My strong men in my family are FBI, they are attorneys, they're DEA, they're police officers, they're doctors. So when my turning point was when I graduated high school and I got accepted into Harvard, my parents told me, well, you can go. What are you going to do in Harvard? Where are you going to work? You've never worked. We've done everything for you. How are you going to cross the street? How are you going to take a bus? And I said to myself, you're right. I can't do it. So I didn't. I didn't go to Harvard. I turned it down. Instead, I went to Miami-Dade Community College, not knocking it, just saying that's where I went. I took my scholarship, and that's where I went, because what was I, little me, 5 foot nothing, gonna do it out in the real world? I was meant to be a housewife. Um, then one of my cousins from the FBI married an FBI special agent, and she was a strong woman, and she refused to hang her diplomas. She refused to stay home. And I said, "Psst, what do I have to stay home? I need to break the cycle." And so I did. I went back to school. I earned my bachelor's, I earned my master's, I earned my doctorate. And even while I was going through school, I was working as a claims adjuster in an auto insurance agency. And my parents, they got into an auto accident, and my dad refused to ask me what to do, what are the steps. He instead called a claims adjuster that was a male because he had all the answers. I didn't. What could I possibly know about cars? It took him for me to get a doctorate to ask me questions about life. Now he respects me. Now that there's a degree hanging on my wall and I refuse to stay home. So that's my story. Never give up. Don't let them squish you because men hear me roll.
Is now in the
We run
conference.
this world.
Yes, yes, thank you. Gretchen.
These are great stories. So I've just always been really bossy, and I don't know if it's because I'm the firstborn or a Leo, but yeah, that's probably okay. But I've just always wanted to be in charge, and that's when I'm most comfortable. And I actually think that being bossy is great. Like it's a great quality. And it's something that I'm definitely trying to encourage in my 3-year-old, and it's working for sure. I think that just to move forward to the current time, I inherited an organization that was founded by a very strong woman, and the organization is run by women. And if I have anything to do with it, it will always be run by a woman. And I think that that's actually really, really important in all sectors, but especially in the nonprofit sector. Women leaders are stronger. They help the bottom line. Companies, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, are more likely to be successful and also humane to their employees if they're led by a woman. So it's really important that that women know that and that they fight for it. And if you don't feel like being in a leadership position, encourage another woman to step up and take on that role.
That's important. Thank you. Thank you. So it's really hard to stand behind the podium, but I will for the purposes of today. We are currently in an election year. We have a female candidate running for president, and regardless of your political views, this is the time for women to stand up and have your voice be heard. I asked the question to any one of the panelists, what do you feel is the most important women's issue today? It's a tough one. Or our audience, anyone who wants to share.
Wow.
Here, we'll start here.
Abortion is probably one of the hottest topics right now.
All right. Anyone else? Sure.
So I think it is pay. We talk about equity, and we're all here. We're women. We've been at some point in the educational system, and I always tell people, teachers are one of the professions that gets the least amount of pay for the amount of degrees that they have. We have master's degree. We have doctorates. I mean, we're in the classroom. This is a profession, and we. Here in the state of Florida, we're the 47th state out of 50 in terms of teacher pay for public school teachers. And I say that because this is a predominantly female workforce. I believe that if education was a predominantly male workforce, that would not be an issue. Pay equity and just salaries and working conditions would not be an issue because it would be a predominantly male workforce. And just historically, that's how it was. Historically, remember, women were encouraged to be at home and take care of the families. So education in the United States started off as a male career. It was male teachers. And somebody got real smart and said, but if we get those housewives, those women in here, we can pay them less. And that's exactly what happened. They started to employ more women and less men. And now we're in this situation where we're predominantly female. We're over 70% here in Dade County, and we struggle with these things like pay equity. And I think pay equity is real. We know that it affects more women of color. So if you are a Black woman, if you are a Latino woman, you get paid even less on the dollar than a white woman does. But pay equity is a real problem.
Yeah, I
And I
would
want
definitely agree.
I piggyback on what Carla was saying because if you guys remember, the Lilly Ledbetter Act, okay, was one of the first acts that President Obama signed into legislation when he came into office, and that was all about pay equity for women. But not only is it pay, it's benefits also.
Absolutely.
Okay, because we call ourselves the leading country. You know, we're one of the few countries that don't have paid maternity benefits.
Right.
In the United Kingdom, they get 40 weeks, 40 weeks of paid benefits. In Canada, they get 16 weeks of paid benefits for maternity or parental leave. So so on one hand, we want to go out and we want to do these things. And why do we have to sacrifice? There needs to be some other type of balance also.
Let me just
Has
add,
left the conference.
pay is definitely an issue. I retired last year from Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and my jobs were always fiscal related jobs. Most of my years there, I was in the budget office, right? And so I got an opportunity to actually see some of the numbers or behind the numbers. And many years we were, and I can say this because I'm not working anymore, right? And so some of the years we were in a budget reduction mode, right? Not enough money from Tallahassee. We just had to make it work. And so it's not easy to have to let people go. It's not easy to have to ask departments to, cut some vital dollars that they actually need. And so what I saw over the years, I'm not going to call any names, but I saw that as the administrative ranks of the district became more female, that there were not the same salaries, not the same, I think, expectations as if the males were there, because there was an expectation for you to do more with less, right? And so, again, based on my background, because when I started, and my background is business, although I worked for the school district for many years, I looked at things differently. And so I have this time is money, let's go, I have to kind of get myself into the touchy-feely, worry about people's feelings kind of thing when you talk, because we just got work to do. So I would say to some of the people who, especially the ladies who would come in the office, like, well, if you work 18 hours a day and they only have to pay you for 8, and now they want to cut it to 6, there it goes. You're giving them more work, which is what we do as women, as opposed to going, wait a minute, I need to value my skills. I say, watch and see where the men are while we're up here working. They are somewhere probably having a cigarette or a drink or home with their wives and families. If you don't value your own skills, how do you expect somebody else to value them? And so I try to get women to think differently about what we bring to the table. Not being mean, but you just need to pay me for the work that I'm doing. But we can't continue to give away, because the more you give, the more they will take and try to pay you less and less.
Yes, and thank you for saying that the they is ambiguous, but the they exists whether it's male or female. And I don't know how many of us have ever had the opportunity to negotiate a salary, and where that education comes from and how to negotiate appropriate pay. Oftentimes, Ms. Dudley and I were just talking about how sometimes you're offered a position and you take whatever the salary is or whatever is offered without ever thinking, can I negotiate for more? And that's not rude. It's not wrong. You're right. So it's important to teach young women how to negotiate, how to value your expertise and your skills. We're going to open up the floor for questions. I know that there's another comment. Ms. Dr. Garcia, did you want to say something? We're going to open up the floor for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Will or Odalis will come to you. Dr. Garcia.
Just quickly, I agree with everything that was said here and with you. For me, my thing is equality as a woman. We hear in the news, we see on the news all the time in India, in Saudi Arabia, in Spain, how women are still walking behind men, how they're getting raped because they want to go to school or because they open the book. And we think, oh, that's outside of the United States. It doesn't happen here. But guess what? Look around. Maybe your sister, maybe a friend of yours, maybe your aunt, maybe your mom has been harassed, touched, humiliated just because they wanted to be a lady boss, just because they wanted to advance. And they might have said, well, maybe I'm not going to say anything right now because if I say, then they're going to say, oh, typical woman. She's being touched. Oh, poor little woman. And then, so we keep quiet. And so for me, it's very important, equality. You don't touch, a man in the butt. Congratulations. Why would you do it to a female? It happens a lot. So equality, big for me.
So I just want to add, not necessarily in the context of the major issues for us in this country, but I think a warning to all of us as women. I think it's so important that we open our eyes, educate ourselves, be familiar with the issues that impact women throughout the world, such that you understand what's going on in Saudi Arabia, as you understand what's going on in Haiti, as you understand what's going on wherever there are women who are facing challenges, many challenges we have dealt with in this country to a large extent, but still we've got equity and parity on the table for us. And many of these women are still very far behind. And so the idea is that we as women, in addition to needing to bring along other women, we've got to value, celebrate, and sort of promote women. And we've got to be sure that we educate ourselves. I can't stress this enough, that you are familiar with female genital mutilation, as you would be about flagging, as you would be about every major issue internationally that impacts a woman.
Thank you. Thank you. We'd like to open up the floor for questions. Are there any questions out there? Burning questions at the moment? Annabelle? Please introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Good afternoon. My name is Annabelle Espinosa. I'm the Director of Research and Evaluation here at the Coalition. And I'm really excited to have you guys here. I've had to hold back tears. I mean, I know it's not a surprise if you know me, I'm emotional. But as I heard your stories, just because it made me reflect on my story. As we were preparing for today, I was looking back at a video. It went viral. I don't know if you guys had the chance to see it. It was around the time that there were snowstorms happening in the Northeast. And it was a Senate meeting. Work hadn't been canceled, but the only people who showed up to work that day were female, were women senators. And the person who was leading the Senate took the time to acknowledge that, that coincidentally, but historically and very proudly, the only women that are here at work, the only people that are at work today are women. And I love the video. But I started scrolling through their comment section, and I saw more than one, probably the majority of comments from people making this statement that I've heard over and over again. If you're looking for equality, why are you placing yourself on a pedestal? If women are so adamant about being treated equally, why are we acknowledging them over men? Why do we have a Women's History Month? Why do we make such a big deal over the accomplishments of women? Why do we not just treat everyone without gender? And so when you hear statements like that, I'm curious to know what your response is.
Let me just, depending on the person making the statement, I think this is where you really must get sarcastic, right?
Absolutely.
Because, yeah, that's such a, but so you say to a man who would make such a comment, well, we have a Women's History Month because we want to celebrate your mother and your sister.
Mm-hmm.
What a great response.
Let me just throw out that I am so pro female, not anti male, but pro female, because I see the need for us to be together and recognize our power and our strength. So for some of you who do know me, um, with my sorority, when I was the civic engagement chair, I started an activity called Pumps, Pearls, and Politics. Now, for those of you all not into black sororities, we're really into our our colors and all of that, right? And we are very parochial. We do things. This is our thing, and this is what we do, and that's it. But again, because of my journey, um, I understood we need to expand. It's not just about my sorority sisters that I love dearly. It's about women. And it's not even just about black women. It's about women. Because we need to recognize where we are and where we can be and not look just, right around us, maybe just our friends or our family. And so there's a need for women to understand that. And that's why we must have our Women's History Month, and we must come together and we must just be women together celebrating our womanness, not being anti male, but understanding that if we want equality for our daughters, our nieces, our mothers, we're going to have to do just what every other group does: get together, run for office, vote people in who are looking, after your needs. And it's really just that simple. But if you can't work through centuries of women are supposed to be home, taking care of kids, and that's not important, then that's a big problem. Because even if you're a housewife, whatever that's really supposed to mean, you are running your household. Okay? So that is a big deal. That's not just I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, whatever. No, I have to go to the grocery store. I have to budget my money. I have to go and budget my time. I got to pick up my kids. It's not just being a housewife. So again, we have to respect what we bring to the world, what we bring to this table, and we have to work together. Women need more team sports. I played football with the boys when I was little. I don't know, you all don't know about the punt, pass, and kick competitions, but we had those way back in the day. And because my dad was the coach, I played with boy stuff when I was doing my boy and girl stuff. And so I was the best, except for this one guy, in the punt, pass, and kick competition. And I wanted to know, why couldn't I be in the competition? This was 1960, whatever, I don't know. And it's because I'm a girl. So that's the kind of stuff that helped shape me, because,
Right.
we have to work together.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Ms. V. Singh and then Dr. Neiman, I know you have something, Dr. Neiman will follow you.
So my response to your question is that I am not actually after equality. I'm after equity, which is very different from equality. If you give both men and women the same thing so that we're treated equally, that means men are still going to come out ahead because they started ahead of us. So the point of having a Women's History Month, just like the point of having a Black History Month, is that we recognize people. We give them something extra. We give them more to help them get to the same place that white men have been for a long time. So this really needs to be reframed as an equity agenda, not an equality agenda. And just to circle back to some of the main issues that were brought up earlier, I agree with all of the issues, parity with pay, paid maternity leave. Most social issue policies disproportionately affect women. Earned sick leave is another example of that. And when you dive into it even deeper, they disproportionately affect poor women of color, and as does the fight going on right now around reproductive justice. The case that's being heard by the Supreme Court is an assault on women's health. And maybe people aren't pro-choice, but hopefully we all stand up for the poor women of color that are going to be shamed and harmed. Their health will be harmed by some of these bills that are being heard right now.
Okay, Dr. Neiman?
I don't, excuse me, I don't think it's an issue of equality. I think women are far superior speak to men, and I'm very serious. As a woman who has worked my entire career, okay, I have a marvelous husband, marvelous. But the way that he thinks about our home and the way that he thinks about our children and the responsibility that he takes is very, very different than mine. And there are many days when I get up and say, you know what, I wish I had a wife. And that's the reality. Women take more responsibility onto ourselves. We are doers. And men tend to stand back, assess, look at things, analyze, while women are there in the trenches doing the work. So I think it's very important to think of ourselves as different. We aren't different. We are not the same. We bring different strengths. We bring a different vision. We bring a different sensibility to everything that we do. And quite frankly, I wish men would get out of my reproductive system altogether.
Okay. Well, we'd like to welcome all the men who came out today. Thank you so much for coming. But it raises a very good question. What is the role of men in supporting women in the workplace? I think it's important for all of the women here who are mothers and those who are significant females in the lives of young boys. What do we teach them? What are we teaching them indirectly and directly about the role of a woman? And I'd like to throw that question out to anyone in the panel or anyone in the audience who wants to take that on. What is the role of men in supporting women in the workplace or at home?
It's an interesting question because one of the things, having an early learning center, when we have our children in the household area, if mom or dad walk into the center a lot of times and see the little boy with the doll baby or the baby carriage, it's like, oh my God. Okay. And so we try to talk to them about the fact that, he's going to be a daddy one day. Okay. And so this is teaching, different kinds of things. And so, but even with that being said, there's an old motto in the African American community. And the more I read about it, I see it in the Latino community too, that mothers raise their daughters and love their sons. Okay. And so from the very beginning, we've got to really look at our little ones and have similar responsibilities and making sure that, washing the clothes and washing the dishes is just not for the girl children and the boy children once a week take out the trash. Okay, so it's about how we, especially from a cultural standpoint, how we raise our sons. Okay, and what we expect from our sons from that particular perspective. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there because it does make a difference.
So one of my colleagues shared the following story. Two ladies ran into each other, hadn't seen each other in a very long time, and one says, my daughter got married. She married the best husband in the world. He does everything for her. He does the shopping, the cooking, the laundry. Wowee, that's terrific. And the other woman shares, my son got married. He married the worst woman in the world. She makes him do the cooking and the shopping and the cleaning. So it's all about perspective. I raised two sons. My younger son is expecting his first child in a week. My son is the one who does the laundry and the shopping and the supporting of his wife because she works in the world of work just as he does. And it has to be a shared responsibility, and that's how my kids were raised. When we talked about birth control and responsibility, you made it, you take care of it. You're not the man who's going to walk away from a situation, and we're very fortunate that we never had that happen, but that's how we raised them. And if they would have been women, they would have been raised the same way, because you cannot move the needle on how women are addressed and treated without raising a next generation of sons.
So my perspective is very interesting right now because I have a 2-year-old and I have a 6-year-old. I have a 6-year-old son and I have a 2-year-old daughter. And I got elected as Secretary Treasurer, the first Latina 3 years ago. And my life changed a lot because I was a classroom teacher that was pulled out, that was doing this work, lobbying in Tallahassee, lobbying in Washington, D.C., and really working to have a stronger public education system here in Miami-Dade. And I would go home, and I was just telling my colleague that I would do all this work, 8 hours a day. Then I would go home, and there was still my other full-time job. I had to do the laundry, I had to fold the laundry, I had to put it away, I had to put my babies to sleep. So that means I had to give them a bath before that. I had to make them eat, and there was a lot of pressure on me. I thought I have to have dinner ready. How do I get all these things done and get dinner ready? And thank God that my husband is so amazing, because he saw that and he realized that he needed to step up. And so he also helps me wash dishes, and he helps me do the laundry. And he doesn't do it exactly how I would
Has
want
left the
him to.
conference.
I would want him to do it. And I look away. That's right. I say, thank God there's a pile there. Thank God, there's a pile of clean clothes right there. Thank God. And but he has helped me a lot. And I say this because it's important for us to realize that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves too, because we have this idea in our mind. It has been embedded into our heads, into our minds, that in order for us to be good women, there are certain things that we need to do. There's certain standards that society expects us to have. We need to look a certain way. We need to act a certain way. We need to do certain things at home. And it's going to continue to perpetuate itself if we continue to believe that. So my daughter, she's 2 years old, but I know that she's learning, and she's smart, and she's talking, and she's watching everything. I take my son with me to marches. If we're at a rally, I need him to know about social justice. I need to take him. I need to take my daughter. My son knows that I am the president of United Teachers of Dade. He made a drawing. He wanted to vote for me. He wanted to vote for his mom, for a woman to be in that position. And that morning, when he knew that the election was coming, he sat down in the table and he said, "Mom, make sure you mail my vote." It wasn't a mail-in vote, but he knows something about the process. And so he understands that women can have these leadership positions. And he wanted to support me, his mom, in having that position. And, my daughter, if she wants to play with dinosaurs, go at it. You want to play outside, you want to be muddy, let's do it. And, it's about exposure, and it's about where do we change that paradigm? Where do we start saying it is okay? And it's okay for me to not do certain things, and it's okay for others to do other things. And so we have to remember that always, and, just encourage each other along the way, because I think that sometimes that's what we forget to do too. We forget to encourage each other. We see that woman, hey, you go, girl.
You go, girl.
But we don't encourage each other and tell, hey, listen, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, but let me help you. How can I help you? Because it's going to be tough.
Yes, Dr. Garcia, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in the clinical setting, I practice, I'm a marriage and family therapist, and when I see families that come in, couples, their main complaint is, well, he goes to work, and then he comes home at 6 o'clock, sits down, expects to be served. I go to work, the woman, I go to work, then I have to come home, cook, and do everything else while he's still sitting down, set the table, put the, babies to sleep, cuddle time, read a book, etc., while he's still, catching up on shows. So, this is their biggest argument. So I practice a technique, which you might be familiar with. It's feminist therapy. Now, don't take me wrong. Feminist therapy in the clinical setting is empowering the man and the woman 50-50 to be able to do gender, things that were the gender says, oh, women are supposed to cook while men are supposed to watch TV. This type of therapy makes them equal. So, babe, while you are cooking, I'll go ahead and do the dishes, or I'll set the table, or when we're done eating, you wash, I dry, or I wash, you dry, etc., etc. So I practice this in my home. My husband was not a fan of that. He, was the 6 o'clock, sit in the couch, you do everything else, even though I also, worked. But, he had no choice but to be an equal partner. And my 6-year-old son has learned a lot from that. He opens doors for me. He puts his little chair on the sink and starts drawing and wants to have a conversation with me. If his dad is sitting in the couch, he says, Mommy's not sitting. what are you doing? Let's go. Let's work. He cooks. You know, he bakes with me. And most recently, funny story. I went to pick him up in school, and a little friend that he has, it's like, hey, Aiden, my daddy's picking me up today. He's a fireman. And Aiden's like, yeah. Well, my mom's picking me up. She's a doctor. Booyah.
Awesome, awesome.
So just want to remind us, ladies, that we've got to be very aware of these social conditionings so that we then recondition ourselves, right? We learn to renegotiate some of these roles. We learn to raise our children with this equity lens that Gretchen is referring to. We learn, or we remind ourselves of the post World War II, well, the during World War II series, right, period, when women had to substitute for men, replacement in just about every sector. And we kept the world going. If anything, we strengthened the economy, strengthened our societies. And so that says to us that we can have it all. We can have it all on our own terms, right? Let us just be aware of that.
And in the vein of reconditioning, I'd like to ask the panel as well as our participants today, as women enter the workforce, we bring who we are. And for many of us, who we are often are breastfeeding moms. And I'd like to you to address the idea or what the role of breastfeeding in the workplace.
Wow, that was right up my alley. So I breastfed both of my children for an entire year. I took 6 months off with my son first, and then I went back to work, and I was breastfeeding. And it was interesting because although it was a predominantly female workforce, I was in the classroom. I had a hard time finding time to, pump and store my son's milk while I was at work. And I had to do it in a closet sometimes, find a little space. And then I finally found, one of my colleagues who said, I'll make it happen for you. I'll make sure somebody covers your class and you come in here and just relax and, do what you need to do. So with my daughter, I only took 3 months off of work. I still breastfed her for an entire year. But it was a different situation. Now I'm traveling and I'm going back and forth and I'm going to Tallahassee and I'm having to go through x-ray machines and trying to figure out how to maneuver all of that and, take my little cooler everywhere I went because I knew the importance and that's something that I wanted to do, that I wanted to make sure that I provided that nourishment for my kids for a full year. And then I started to realize that there was policy made by men, right? We talked about how men have all this control over policy that allowed women that were hourly workers to have time off. So there is federal policy for nursing moms that if they're hourly workers, they can take time off to do that. They're allowed to do that, but not for salaried women. So disenfranchised millions of women because a man wrote it and he didn't think maybe that women have salary jobs. So only hourly workers, had this disadvantage. And so I started to think about it and, I came back to work and I said, let's look at our policy. What do we have? And it was the same thing. It was just for hourly workers. And we were able to successfully negotiate into our contract, Miami-Dade Public Schools contract, that women that come back from, maternity leave, if they choose to nurse their child for up to a year, that if their planning time doesn't work out, if their lunch time does not work out, they have time. They have 20 minutes a day. That is not the bathroom, because that is where they want to send us when we're nursing, the bathroom. Would you ever eat in the bathroom? No. So why would you send a baby to eat in the bathroom? Or why would you send a woman to prepare her food in the bathroom or a closet? So we were able to negotiate that into the contract. There are very few districts in the nation that have that clause or that contractual language. And as a matter of fact, the Washington Post picked up that story. They were talking about how teachers struggle to have these nursing rights. This is a workforce that takes care of everybody's children, and you can't take care of your own. What a shame. And so the Washington Post picked up this story, and they reported on it. They mentioned Miami-Dade County Public Schools and our contract. But, it just shows that although this is a predominantly female workforce, there's still so many barriers, there's still so many humps, there's still so many things that we have to overcome because we're not given the respect or
Has
the
left the
thought
conference.
that we should have. So
Thank you. Thank you. There was a question here.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a comment. This is actually going back to what we were talking about before, and I thought. I'm sorry. Oh, stand up. I'm sorry. Hi, everybody. I thought about a story when I was an undergraduate at University of Maryland, and I had a professor. I don't remember the class, and he said, "Okay, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, only women will speak. The men, you're going to sit and you're going to be quiet." And I was like, "Wow, why is that?" And at the time, I didn't get it. I was 19, and I didn't really have a feminist conscience like I do now. But now I get it. And that is because oppression lives in silence. And what happens is our women's stories, we don't see them in the larger paradigm. We don't see the injustice against our bodies. I mean, when you're talking about 1/4 or 20% of all young girls are sexually assaulted when they enter the university. How can we look at another country and think, wow, we're so ahead? This is craziness. So I think that our stories, we have to, if we want to tell our men and our brothers and our children and our young boys, we need to tell them to listen to our stories. And so I think oppression lives in silence. If we want to change things, we need to keep talking, and we need to have these conversations, and we need to let men be privy, and they need to also learn to listen. Thank you.
All right, bravo. And sometimes, perhaps not that word. Maybe it's pushy, maybe it's bossy, all of those things. And so how do we change that narrative and turn that narrative into something positive and be better to each other? It's really important that we propel women to the next step. It's really important that we harness the skills that we have and make sure that we share our gifts with others. It's important that we have these conversations each and every single day. Any other questions from the panel or from comments? Belkis, if we can get a microphone to you. Belkis, if you would introduce yourself and then make your comment or question, please.
First of all, I want to thank you so much for being here today. Your stories are amazing. Your advice is amazing. My name is Belkis Torres. I work with the Early Head Start program. The one question I have, hearing all your struggles and all your challenges, if you were to go back to when you started your career, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
I would give the advice, find yourself a mentor. I did not have a mentor, and I kind of navigated the roads all by myself. And as I said, the more people told me, no, you can't do that, the more I said, oh, yes, I will. But I think it's very important for young women to have someone that they can lean on. I was not the first generation of women's liberated, that whole thing. I was the second group. So I had every opportunity and every access provided to me. I could have gone into any field that I wanted to. And I chose to go into education because I said, if all these women become lawyers and doctors, who's going to teach our children? There was nobody there to support that. There was nobody there to guide me. And I think that's critically important. So find yourself someone who you can turn to, the go-to person for advice. And hopefully that person will build you up and make you see your own value and that you can. And I think that that's important because the journey is hard and it's very hard to do it on your own. And it's different to get that kind of advice or any advice from a male. You need it from somebody who walks in your shoes as well.
I would say, don't let anyone tell you you can't do it. Don't let them tell you you're too short, you're too tall, you're too light, you're too dark, you can't do it. That's basically what's happening in my world. I was told, I can't do it. This is what I was born to do, and then that's it. There's no progress for me. So don't let them tell you you can't.
So if Susan's advice is around a business mentor, someone who's in your field, who can provide you guidance, I would add that you also figure out who can be on your personal board of directors, right? So these are the people, whether you want to call it your posse, these are a select group of women who will give you guidance, advice on whom you can bounce off ideas, with whom you can share your frustrations. Yes, advice, but along other things than business.
I would say if I could start over again, I would nurture more relationships. Um, I would not work so hard. I would work smart. I would not doubt myself, and I would take a lot more risks.
Anyone else want to answer?
Yes.
Thank you. It's important.
So I think that I am a religious person. I do believe that there is a purpose in every single person's life. And so I have always thought that there is a purpose for me to be in every setting. And I've been afforded a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things. And in every situation, I've always tried to do it my best. I didn't necessarily understand why that particular event, that particular situation. But now, in retrospect, I realize that all of those things trained me for something. I learned very valuable skills in every single setting. And so you bring those with you and you add them on. You add them on to your, to your bag of knowledge, to your bag of skills. So it doesn't matter where you're at, but it matters what you come out with, right? What you learn. And so take advantage of every opportunity. If a door opens, take it. You don't know where that is going to lead you to, but take it. Take advantage of those opportunities.
Anyone else? Gretchen?
The comment about taking more risks really resonated with me because I think, and speaking for myself, I've spent a lot of time in a space wondering what other people are thinking and whether what I really feel like saying in the moment is the most appropriate thing to say. How is it going to be received? If I make this move at work, what are people going to think of me? Are they going to think that I'm to this or to that? And it's really a waste of time. And I think realizing what a waste of time it is a factor of age and getting older. And I hear that once you hit 50, it's awesome. That you really, they call it the F at 50s. Yeah. 60's terrific. I can't wait.
60 gives you free reign.
But it really is liberating to just be yourself and not care so much about other people.
All right.
Can I just
what other people think?
Well, I mean, yes, about what other people think, but I also, I think that related to that is that women often assume that they have to be the caretakers for the world. And you know what? We need to give the work back to everybody else.
Right.
That's right.
And for me, it's about finding your passion and following your passion. For most of my life, my I don't want to say I chased the dollar, but the dollar found me, and people tapped me on my shoulder. I really went looking for jobs or opportunities. They always came to me based on my reputation and all that kind of stuff. So I never really said, this is what I want to do, because I always wanted to be a teacher or a professor. And that opportunity, I never pursued it because of corporate always pursuing me. So I would say to you, especially the younger you are, the easier it is to do because you're not bogged down with so many other things. If you have a passion for something, find it and go after it, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you happy.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Victor.
I'll tread lightly. My name is Victor Caballero. I have some questions, comments, and concerns. I've been blessed to have very strong women in my life. My mother is superwoman to me. My grandmother is indestructible. My wife, she is just completely amazing. I am the first to admit that I am nothing without her, and I'm sure she loves to hear that. I have a very non-traditional household compared to what my parents raised me to have. My father is a hardworking blue-collar guy, worked 2 jobs. My mother worked 3 jobs, so we only saw her at 9 o'clock when it was time to eat. When my mother became unemployed, she went into what her mother raised her to be, which was a housewife. And I got to tell you, being a housewife is hard work. And I know that because I am a new parent, and the 4 hours that I have to care for my kids are like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And sometimes it's a little conflicting because my wife is getting those 4 hours of sleep because she's been with them for 10 hours during the day. And most of the times I just want to run and wake her up and say, hey, give them a breast or something, maybe they'll stop. But unfortunately, it's helped me to kind of understand the nature versus nurture aspect of parenting, where, yes, that is their mother. Biology tends to lean to have a stronger connection between mother and kids, but I too feel that I can provide a strong enough connection or, parenting for that child to depend on me as well. And as strong as my parents were, in that sense, they were also weak. Why? My father, being the hardworking blue-collar guy that he is, he doesn't know how to turn on the stove. He doesn't know what it is to clean a bathroom. He doesn't know what it is to iron a shirt. Me, on the other hand, I cook, I clean, I iron, I do laundry, not as well as my wife would like me to, but I do. And I do take a lot of pride in doing so. Why? Because I feel that if, worst comes to worst, to me and my wife get separated tomorrow, we won't be lost. We don't depend on each other 100%. Do we help each other out? Yes, of course. Like I said, I feel less of a man without her. But I do feel that I can care for my own. I wouldn't need a wife to survive. The same way I don't think she would need a husband to survive. Well, actually, I know that she wouldn't need one. So being that she's a sociology major, we've obviously had a lot of debates, discussions, and sometimes without me wanting to be, I may sound, insensitive to what she feels is important to her as a woman. And, it's important for women to remind men a lot of the times when we are being insensitive, because sometimes when at least we're conscious and we make an effort to not be, we do tend to do that because it's just the way that our previous generations have programmed us to be. So I do congratulate you guys for having these talks. I think it is very important. I think we are far inferior to females. I'm very big on evolution. I think somewhere along the line, our strand went this way. You guys kept evolving, so we're still kind of primal. So I apologize on behalf of men for that. But my question is now, to backtrack a little. I know a lot of women, either consciously or not, make an effort to, be noticed or, feel some kind of importance in today's society. But then again, a lot of those women that do make that effort to be, quote unquote, independent, sometimes you'll still hear them say, oh, no, I'm not doing that. That's a man's job. Or, I'm not taking out the trash. He needs to take out the trash. Or I'm not walking the dog. Or I'm not going to fix the hinge on the door. That's what my husband's for. And that's why I go back to my mother where, she did depend on my father for a lot of those things. So my question to the panel or everyone else is, how does it make you feel when you hear another woman say, oh, that's a man's job?
Honestly, Victor, I've never heard that. Okay, that's just me. Okay, that's a man's job because I've always had to do most of it at some point in time, and had shared responsibilities. Now there are some things I'm not going to lie because I hate taking out the garbage and I hate pumping gas. So if I don't have to do those 2 things, and my husband or my sweetie can do it for me, I let them. Okay, so that's just not because I can't, and not that I say it's a man's job. It's just that I hate to do it, so I kind of push it off.
preferred
Let me
reasons.
just say that the only time that I have said that is when I just didn't really want to do it. And so you just go into the helpless female role and you guys eat it up. And so you got what you want, I got what I wanted, so we're all even. So
Oh boy.
You know, what's interesting as head of an organization, majority female, but with a few men, you know, I find myself just going above and beyond the call of duty to demonstrate that I can get it done with or without you, right? So something needs fixing. Sometimes I know nothing about it. I will go and get besides, I have a toolbox that I've brought into the organization. I'll go get the toolbox and I'll roll it out and I'll pick a screwdriver. It's probably not even the right Phillips size. And then I'll look like I know what I'm doing. Right. So the point is, I think speaking of renegotiating and reconditioning ourselves, it's not a man's job. It's just that that's one of the jobs you didn't learn how to do or that you don't particularly like to do. Right. But if you had to, believe you me, you would.
That question for me brought a song, and I'm singing in my head. It's a man's world, but it will be nothing without a woman.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we have arrived at 1:30 very quickly, and I think that the discussion has been really rich. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. It has been a pleasure to have all of you sit on this panel and share your wisdom with us. Let's give them all a round of applause. Today we celebrate women, but the conversation shouldn't end today. It shouldn't end at the end of the month. Celebrating women is something that we need to do every single day. We've conquered the who does she think she is? And I always say, you better hope I'm somebody, because if I don't do good, no one's gonna let you in the door. So it's important to support women who are doing big things. It's important to celebrate women each and every day. It's important to celebrate the diversity that exists within us and share our wisdom with others. I invite each and every one of you to join us next month when we celebrate Child Abuse Awareness Month, but we do have a couple more things. I want to celebrate each one of you. So as I call your name, if you could please join me at the podium. We want to give a small token of appreciation for each of you and make sure we capture a photo of each of you. So starting with Gretchen Biesing, in recognition of your time and willingness to share your knowledge and resources with community stakeholders and staff at the Early Learning Coalition of Miami-Dade and Monroe, we thank you. Next, Ms. Vanessa Woodard Byers. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's grab all of them. Gypsy Metellus. If I can get the committee up here with me, I think it'd make this presentation a lot nicer. Thank you so much for coming. Carla Hernandez Motz. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Sheila Dudley, our partner, our friend. Dr. Garcia, who's one of our own. And last but certainly not least, our Shiro, Dr. Neiman. Yes, this devil wears Prada, she says to me. So we can get a quick picture with everyone. Before we leave, we have a special gift for two people in the room. So just 1 second while we get this photo out.